this week, we've got one of my favourite type of podcasts where we follow investors' journeys. It's so great to see how much progress can be made in such a short space of time if you follow some key principles. And this week, we're going to see a lot of progress and talk you through those key principles.
Yes, thank you for joining us for the Property Podcast, where every Thursday morning property investors come together to be informed and inspired. We are following up with the intrepid hubbers who are allowing us to look over their shoulders as they make progress with their property journeys. So stick around for that, because there's lots of lessons for you to learn and success for us all to celebrate.
So it's time for our news story now, and we love it when a Home Track report comes out. For those who don't know, Home Track is a monthly report where you get a list of 20 cities in the UK and how they're performing when it comes to capital growth. And lo and behold, another month has passed and we have another report. And Estate Agent Today have reported on the report, and their headline reads, Northern City house prices storm on as South succumbs to Brexit slowdown. Shocker, Rob. Didn't see this one coming.
No, well, this is not exactly new news. This has been a trend that we've been talking about for a long time. We picked up on it far too early, but then it did actually come to pass, and it's been going on for a little while now. So in Liverpool, for example, house prices up 5.7% annually to an average of 122,000. Other historically expensive southern cities like Oxford down 0.6% as well. As well as sales, they're also talking about volume. So there are fewer transactions happening in the south as well. Sales in southern England, it says, are down by 13% since 2015. Whereas across the north, transactions are actually increasing. Again, in Liverpool, transactions up by 19% since 2015. Rob, lots of different things you could put this down to. Higher stamp duty for more expensive properties being one of them, Brexit being another. There's lots in there. What do you think the main drivers are?
I think the main driver overall is the long-term driver, which is that property in the north didn't move for a long time, so it became undervalued. And when something is undervalued, people eventually give it attention. We were some of those people, and then the market reacts to it. And that's exactly what's played out. It wasn't that hard to predict that Manchester and Birmingham were going to go like they did. It wasn't hard then to say Liverpool would be next. And the other cities that we've picked out, like Nottingham and Sheffield, well, again, it's not rocket science. It's just looking at areas, looking at the value that they're offering, looking at what their prices have done there previously, and just following a basic trend. For some reason, economists just seem to predict more of the same. So if London's growing, they just say London's going to grow more. And now the north is growing, they're going to say the north is growing more. But you can just look at where the money's flowing. And the reason why we've been so accurate on our predictions over the last few years is not because we're property geniuses. It's just simple. It's just really easy to see. But Rob, it's also really pleasing to see that we're actually right with our simple thought process.
Now, today is the first Thursday of the month. That means, of course, that Property Hub meetups are taking place across the country, including Bristol, where our meetups are now back. If you are heading along to one of those tonight, have a great time. If you can't make it along or you're listening late, well, they happen every month. So go get yourself a ticket for the next one. Go to propertyhub.net/meetups. Also, Rob, last week we launched our YouTube channel. We stepped in front of the camera for the first time, and luckily it seems like the results haven't been as disastrous as we'd feared.
No, it's been really nice. The Property Hub community is a lovely community. Thank you for all your lovely comments and support. We've got a handful of videos out already, and we're going to do so much more. We're getting started. You know, what we've done so far is just the very beginning. Like the podcast early on, if you listen back, it's a little bit ropey. And with YouTube, we're just dipping our toe in. But we're committed to treating this as seriously as we have done the podcast. So if you've not subscribed, make sure you do, because we're going to be putting a lot out there. Our intention is to get a video, at least one, out every single week. And who knows, there may be multiple videos in the future. And we're going to bring different styles of videos forward as well. The main thing is there's just more education there. And in video, we can get across some messages a lot easier because we've got the visual aspect in play as well. So check out our YouTube channel. It's Property Hub UK, so that's youtube.com, Property Hub UK. Get yourself subscribed, turn on the little notification bell as well so you don't miss any new videos, and make sure you return to that channel every week to find new content that we are putting up.
So about a year ago now, we started tracking a few Property Hub members on their property journeys, checking in with them, seeing what they're up to and following along. And we love doing this because this is really what it's all about. It's about real world experiences. And the theory is great. We love the theory. We love doing episodes where we explain a new concept or dive deep into some specialized area of knowledge. But that's all supporting actually going out there and doing something. So you need to combine that knowledge with action. And the best way to take action is to hear about other people who are doing it, see what they're doing, learn from their mistakes, model their successes, and also realise that, hey, they're doing it, why shouldn't you? We're not following anyone superhuman on their journey. They weren't gifted millions to invest. They didn't grow up with all this specialised knowledge. They're just figuring it out and making it happen. So we love this series, and it's especially great now we're a year in because we get to see what they've accomplished in such a short space of time. And as you listen to this episode, it should really drive home to you just how much is possible in only the space of a year. So we're going to catch up with 3 hubbers today. First up, we have Sarah.
I'm Sarah, and I'm now 43, aging as the podcast goes on. And I live in Teddington, and I've got 2 buy-to-lets down here. And last year I started a flipping company in Sheffield, and I've done 1 flip, and I'm just completing on the second one now.
So that's awesome. But the bit we really want to hear about is what has she done since?
So the first one I did was a 2-bed flat in a purpose-built apartment that just needed a complete modernisation. So there's nothing structural, just a gut and strip back to the studs, kind of replaster, re-bathroom, kitchen and everything like that. So we put that on the market back in March. Took about 9 weeks to do, and it sold pretty quickly. And so we moved on to the second one, which is a bigger project. It started off as a 2-bed semi-detached property in a really nice area, and we've added a conservatory onto that and punched into the loft to add a 3rd bedroom, so it's a bit of a bigger project than the last one. So we're into it should take about 5 months by the time we are completing, which is very soon.
Okay, so since we last caught up, she's practically finished doing another flip. That's pretty good going. So the thing that these 2 projects have got in common is Simon. Simon was a project manager based up in Sheffield where she's doing these projects. On the first project, Simon was her project manager. But on the second one, Sarah's actually partnered up with Simon to do a joint venture. Now, joint ventures are this kind of mysterious thing that you hear about. They're often touted as the solution to everything, and they can work in so many different ways. So we really wanted to dig in with Sarah and find out a little bit more about how this relationship worked.
So, I mean, how the JV works in this situation is basically it's my baby. So I organise the purchase, all the finance, the bridging, it's all in my company. Simon's put in sort of 15k into that, so he'll get part of that profit share at the end of it, but he's also employed along the way as well as the builder and main contractor in it as well. So that's how it's working for this one, and yeah, it's been really easy. We get on well, so it hasn't had any issues. Because he's got that building skills, I've used him as a project manager up there because he's basically the man on the ground. But we kind of work together in terms of, like, I do the project plan, really, like knocking down what needs to be purchased, all the big items, and he does the smaller sort of day-to-day purchasing of, you know, like the drywall and all that kind of thing, the skirting boards, whereas I'm more the bigger picture, right, let's order these floors, this carpet, this kitchen, that kind of thing.
Okay, so this really does seem like a great fit, and with someone she trusts, which is so important. And the fact they've got money in the game really does help too. Partnering with someone for a JV isn't something you should do lightly, and that's not the case here. Sarah has been able to work with Simon before she started this JV. So does this mean that Sarah can now sit back and take it easy?
Well, actually, this time I haven't been up quite as regularly as I was for the first one. The first one I was there, like, I think it was every week, week and a half, and overnight a lot. This time I haven't been able to get up there as regularly. And when I have, I've been going up and back in a day, just going up and checking and knowing what the guys are doing. I'm on the phone to them every day. They're sending me photos. I mean, I feel like we've got such a good relationship with how we're working now that I don't need to be boots on the ground quite as much as I felt I needed to be the first project.
So with this JV in place, does it mean that Sarah doesn't need to get up to Sheffield as much?
I mean, I am a bit of a control freak, so I probably don't need to be driving up there, and it takes a good, like, sort of 8 hours driving up and back in a day, which can do your head in a bit. But I don't need to probably be doing that. But, you know, there's little things that you can't see from a distance, like the kitchen island. when it goes in, is there enough room to walk around it? Is it what I visualize actually in the space and things like that? You need to be on the ground to actually feel the space and make those decisions as well. Like, is the ensuite really going to work?
So it sounds like Sarah's found a great way to work remotely. She's using a lot of the things that we've talked about in previous episodes, where we talked about how to work with a builder in terms of making sure that they're sending photos and you're checking in regularly. There is a lot that you can do remotely. And I'm sure Sarah finds it easier because she's actually partnered with her project manager. So both parties are aligned in what it is that they're trying to achieve. So that's fantastic. She's achieved something that a lot of people want to do. But this also throws up a bit of a challenge. If Sarah's not going to be up there all the time, how's she going to find that next deal?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, actually. I've found that I've become far more efficient and I haven't had to view as many properties because I can see online whether it's in the street that I want to be, and I can do a lot of the groundwork from my computer. So I can have a look and see what the comps and the comparables in the area are, whether there's any margin in it, what I would need to get for me to make any margin on it. And then I have a chat to the actual agent prior to that and say, look, this is what I would be looking at offering. Is it worth me viewing? You know, so it's worth doing your groundwork first, and then I can narrow it down to properties that, and when I'm up there, I like over Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week, I did about 3 viewings because that was the only 3 that were on the market that had been narrowed down that were of interest to me. And of those, I made 3 offers. 2 of them are still on the table. So they were all ones that I knew had value in them.
So we love this. Sarah's doing a few things that we think are spectacular. Sarah knows what she is after, and that's so important. She knows the areas and she knows what she's looking for. And that focus, that laser focus, means that Sarah isn't getting distracted by the things that aren't important. Property is full of distractions. It's so easy to look at the next exciting thing or the next exciting area. But Sarah's found something that works for her. And if it's working well, why mix it up? And because she isn't, she's getting the results. The other thing she's great at is Rightmove. She seems to be a bit of a Rightmove ninja. I'm a bit worried that she might put Rob and I to shame now. She's really taken advantage of the tools available to her to make sure that she's making the best and informed decisions and also finding the best deals. And layering on top of that, she's also developing relationships with the estate agents. So she's got the online work nailed, but she's not just resting on her laurels. She's also building those relationships. Having those open and honest chats are really paying off for her. And of course, we absolutely love that she values her time. Time is our most precious commodity, and she's looking to be as most efficient as possible and getting the most bang for her buck when it comes to her own time. And that seems to be really paying off.
Yeah, I think efficient is the word, Rob. It's a result of knowing what she wants, knowing the tools to find what she wants, and developing those relationships with agents so she's not wasting any time there. It's a combination of those 3 things that's allowing her to make such good use of her time. Now, the approach that she takes with agents sounds really smart. And investors, I think, often see agents as a barrier or an adversary. But it sounds like Sarah's found a really great way of working with them. So we wanted to find out more.
I think the key thing that you have to do is get the agents on side. The 2 offers that are currently on the table are very, very low and they're very cheeky, and probably none of them will stick, but it's worth throwing it out. And what I do is when I do those cheeky offers, I said to the real estate agent just yesterday, I said, look, I understand that going back to the vendor with a low ball offer is no fun for an agent. So let me email you with a full list of the reasons why I'm offering that. And I understand that those numbers work for me, but they may not work for the vendor. However, I don't want to assume that they're in, their position. I want to give them the opportunity to say, oh, no, that doesn't work for me. Or, hey, my situation has changed and I am willing to entertain that offer now. It's been on the market for 6 months and it's not moving. So, yeah, I'm happy to take that, even though I've turned down a higher offer. So it's more about just giving the agent some kind of credibility with the vendor as well.
Sarah's approach here is really powerful. So many people make lazy offers where you throw a number in, it's ridiculous, and you just hope one of them lands. Now, some people use that as a strategy and they just throw out loads of offers. And you know what? That might work, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't help you build a relationship. By giving the agent information and saying, hey, here's why this offer is coming in, it actually helps them. Because if you just put an offer in with no information, the agent's got to justify that offer and probably isn't going to present it in its best light. But by helping them understand, giving them the information to take to the vendor means that your offer has more chance of succeeding. But what it also helps with is keeping that relationship with the agent. And ultimately, if you get the agent on side, it's going to significantly improve your chances of getting a deal done.
So it's been great to hear from Sarah. She sounds more and more experienced and confident every time we speak to her. She's made so much progress. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what she's done next time we catch up. But it's not just Sarah who's been busy. Let's catch up next with Iain and hear what he's been up to since we last spoke.
It's Iain Large from Chelmsford. I think last time we spoke, we were just coming to the end of a 2-bedroom house that we were building in Chelmsford, which wrapped up successfully, rented out straight away for a decent amount of money, which was an absolute godsend, and released the money out of that. And then we launched headlong into converting a HMO that we owned into 2 houses and building a new one on the end of that, and is coming to an end. 2 of them are sold, and I'm keeping the last one as a rental.
Great. So since we last spoke, he's managed to nearly finish the conversion and sell 2 out of the 3. So Ian's a very busy boy now with lots of developments going on. So what's he got planned for the next 12 months? I don't think it's a long holiday.
Well, I finally remembered to get some focus back onto trying to grow our portfolio, looking at sort of what around locally. Obviously, being in the southeast, everything costs an absolute fortune. So we've been looking at sort of the lower end of the market, the studios, which the returns on them are fantastic. But it's my first venture into leasehold. I've not done leasehold before, so I've got my first studio flat going through at the moment. And then we've also trying to buy our next plot of land, which will be our next development, which is a large 5-bedroom house, more of a top-end luxury job in a wealthy village nearby. So just trying to get everything lined up for that, get all the architect's drawings and planning permissions in place and what have you.
So Ian's been doing a lot of development, and obviously he's looking to do more. He's not slowing down the pace. But it also sounds like he's having a bit of a change in strategy here and is looking into studio lets. So we wanted to find out more about what was pushing him in that direction.
Yeah, studio, 1-bedroom flat, the smaller stuff that doesn't require as much of a deposit, and ideally with a sort of buy, refurb and refinance model, if we can find things that need that little bit of extra work. And with the market standing still, there's a lot of the stuff at the smaller end that's just hanging on the market, it's just lingering. So people are open to offers.
This is really quite a shift in strategy. You know, Ian's been involved in like big developments and now studios. So we had to ask, why studios?
Yeah, well, the one that we've got going through will rent out for £600 a month, and we're only having to put 25 grand in to buy it, of which we should be able to recycle all but about 5 grand back out of it in 6 months' time. Compare that to the 3-bed houses that we sort of have been buying, where you need to leave about 80 grand to 90,000 in it these days for a rental return of sort of £1,100-1,300 a month.
Well, it all makes a bit more sense when you hear those numbers. You can definitely see the motivation there for Ian. A lot less capital needing to go in and much higher yields. So it looks like when it comes to the studios, Ian's focus definitely isn't on capital growth.
Yeah, I'm not interested in capital growth for the studios. I want to very quickly try and get enough cash flow to get to where we all want to be as a partnership within sort of the next 3 years, at which point we might get a little bit more clever or sensible with the investing. For the short term, I just want to focus on cash flow, get all of our wages coming from the investment company, and then that solves that forever going forward. So once our cash flow's locked in and we're still doing the developments to raise additional funds, we can still use that money to make more sensible longer term purchases, just to get where we need to be as quickly as humanly possible.
Okay, there it is. We now understand why Ian's going after studios. Because on the podcast, it's well documented that in most circumstances, Rob and I aren't fans of studios. However, Iain knows exactly what he wants to achieve, and he's adapting his strategy to get there as quickly as possible. My only concern with this strategy is the amount of studios he'll need to hit his cash flow number may be significant, so it could be a big job managing all of those. However, he's found the type of investment that will help him hit his numbers, and he's cracking on with it. But let's not forget that Iain is doing all of this in the southeast, which is a slightly trickier market at the moment. So, is he considering going north?
Yeah, I appreciate it's absolutely daft chasing high yields in the southeast, but I think it can be done, and we're trying to do it. Just a way that feels safer for me.
There's a really important lesson in here, I think, because on the podcast we talk a lot about how the north is where the opportunity is at this stage in the cycle. And all else being equal, that's where we would advise someone to invest. But it all comes back again to this point of knowing what you want and knowing what you're good at and how you operate. And ever since we first spoke to Iain, it's been clear that his network and his ability to make connections with people and work with people is one of his real strengths. It's what he's good at. It's also what he enjoys. So he's not daft. He knows that the yields are higher in the north and he could get more of a return there. But by going there, he'd be losing some of his biggest advantages. He wouldn't be in a market he knows. He'd have to build a new network from scratch. And he wouldn't be able to be a full-time, hands-on investor, which clearly is what he wants to be.
Like Sarah, Iain has placed a huge value on his time. Instead of travelling and building up a network and learning about a new market, how Iain is applying this is he's relying on his expertise that he already has in his target area. So it's been great hearing from Iain, but we're not done yet because it's great to have Steve back on the show.
Okay, let's remind ourselves what Steve's journey looks like so far.
I'm Steve, come from London. I'm 37. I work in the media. I have been investing for around about 5 years now. No, 6 years around the North Kent coast area. So going down from Whitstable, Herne Bay, Margate, series of towns along that line of the coastline. I have 4 single-let properties, so quite simple, really.
Okay, so that's where he was. What's he been up to since we last spoke?
I recently purchased a 2-bed flat in Folkestone, which ticks a couple of boxes, really. Has a lot of potential for improvement, I think. And Folkestone is another area across that coastline area that's pretty affordable, and it's going to be the next Margate. There's a lot of prospects there for growth.
So because of all that research, Steve finds this easy now. The fear has been taken away from him. He calls them vanilla buy-to-lets. You know, it's boring almost because it's so easy, because he's just used to researching. It's not emotional for him now. And although we're not talking grand designs here, it's a really solid foundation to build a portfolio on. Now, last time we spoke, Steve was keen to get into the HMO game.
I think perhaps like a lot of people out there listening to this right now, work has taken over somewhat and has been really manic over the last year or so, and gets increasingly so. So I'm kind of, time poor. And so the HMO thing is still very much on the back burner. I'm really into the idea of being a bit more adventurous and having a go at doing one. Perhaps a multi-let rather than a full-blown HMO. I've got my area, Mansfield. I know a lot of people there now, and I know the area pretty well. But at the moment, I must confess, it's on the back burner. And so as my property journey continues, I haven't been particularly adventurous. 4 single-let buy-to-lets that haven't needed much doing to them, and so I've relied on the market doing the work for me. And to be fair, the area that I'm in, I've kind of done all right there, and I've managed to refinance 2 of the 4, about 2 and 4 years in, just through the market alone, really.
It's natural to want to level up and keep challenging yourself. And yeah, that's important. But you've also got to be realistic about what your life looks like and what you can commit to. So Steve's done the right thing by not just rushing straight in. It sounds like he's done a good amount of research. He's found a target area where he could invest in HMOs. He's built a bit of a network there. So he's not just charged in blindly. And that pause has not just put him in a good position to go and do this when he wants to, but he's also realised that now isn't the time. And hopefully Steve realises this, because it's not that he's being boring or not pushing himself. He's built a solid portfolio on good fundamentals, and by taking the time to find the right properties in the right area, all that research is paying off, and it's paying dividends, not only in the income that's been coming in, but on the growth that he's been enjoying in the area as well.
I've heard you guys talk before about investor profile, and I suppose because work's busy and work's going so well, I'm not desperate at the moment to leave and to turn property investment into a full-time venture. So I suppose I should be kind of happy with where I'm at right now. In the longer term, in the shorter term, obviously I'm enjoying the passive income. In the longer term, I would like to do it full-time, but whether that's 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, I don't know.
What Steve is doing is buying financial freedom, one single let at a time. And one day, when the time's right, he'll be able to take the plunge if he wants to. He'll have choice. And I think that's what is really powerful about building a buy-to-let portfolio for the future, is the choice it gives you. You may love your work today, but who knows, in 15 years' time, you may just have had enough. And if you've built the portfolio, you have that choice. And knowing that you've got that in your back pocket gives you a real sense of power and the confidence to know that you can just be doing the things you love and you don't have to compromise for anyone. So Steve has done really well, and his research, again, is paying off for him, and it will continue to.
Over the last few years, the area that I'm in has been really, really good to me. I have some really steep growth, particularly in places like Whitstable and Herne Bay. A lot of hype around Margate, and although prices have risen, perhaps not to the extent that the buzz would suggest. Am I more cautious? I think at my level, the risk is relatively low, and it's all about picking the right properties in the right areas.
So there we have it. We've heard from Sarah, who's flipping houses in Sheffield, Iain, who's changing strategy from developments into buying studios in the southeast, and Steve, who's steadily picking up flats on the North Kent coast. These all seem pretty different. They're all out there in different areas, pursuing very different projects, but there are a few important things that they've all got in common. Let's start with the most basic one. They're all out there doing something. Every single person has made progress since we've last spoken to them. And I think day to day, it can sometimes feel like you're not making progress. If you're still waiting around for the right property to buy and you just can't find the right one, or you're waiting for a purchase to go through, which can feel like it takes forever, or you've got a property that you've developed or refurbished, you're trying to sell it, and it's sitting there on the market and you're waiting for offers to come in. From one day to the next, and even from 1 week to the next, it can feel like you're stalled, or it can feel like not much is happening. But actually, if you're out there consistently trying to make things happen, over the space of a few months, it's actually surprising how much you can get done. I think what's also important is that they all know what they want. They all want something different out of property. They all want something different out of their lives. So something would have gone wrong if they were all out there pursuing exactly the same strategy. They figured out what they want, and they figured out the best way to use property to get there. And sometimes you get that spot on from the start, and sometimes you need a change of strategy. Iain realised that the strategy he was following wasn't going to get him to where he wanted to be in the medium term, so he's changing a little bit. Steve was doubting his strategy, and he went and looked for alternatives and realised that having done that, actually the grass isn't greener, and he was doing the right thing all along, and he's just going to keep on going.
What these people have all got in common is focus. They have a goal they want to achieve, and they have a strategy for getting there. And yes, like Rob and I as well, we're all guilty of this. We can get distracted by interesting things like HMOs, as we've heard this week. But remind yourself of your goals, remind yourself of your life situation, and stay focused. Because if you stay focused, results will come. And the other thing, again, a common theme we're seeing here, and rightly so, is research. Research is so important. It's great listening to the podcast and doing the courses, but if you don't apply this knowledge to your own deals and do your research, even if the deal is being presented to you by someone else, that is not an excuse for you to abdicate from your responsibilities and not do any research. Research is a fundamental principle of successful property investment. You must always do it. And it's so pleasing to see that that is not absent here whatsoever. And like Rob said, what is also very clear here, and thankfully for this podcast, is action. Action is key. Like Rob said at the beginning, these are normal people. What they have in common is getting the basics right, being focused, having a strategy, doing their research, but ultimately taking action. So many people will try and kid you and tell you property is a complex game and that you need to go on multiple courses and spend thousands of pounds to crack the codes to get this right. But it's not. It's basic core principles that just need to be followed. Unfortunately, sometimes the simplest things aren't the easiest to execute, and so many people fall foul of this. But we will continue to hammer this message home so more and more of you become successful investors. And well done to everyone who's featured on the journey today. Very, very impressive.
So it's that part of the show where every week we read out a review from a wonderful listener. Every week, that is, except this week. Because this week, we're not reading out a review, we're saying thank you. Because this week, Rob, we've passed a very significant milestone.
We certainly have. So happy. Thank you so much. We're the first business podcast in the UK to pass 1,000 reviews. So yeah, all the BBC podcasts, all the Financial Times podcasts, not one other out there has hit 1,000 reviews yet. And we have. And we only have because of you. Thank you so much. That support and generosity just keeps us so motivated. We absolutely love it that so many of you love it. Because I'm also pleased to report that the vast majority of those reviews are positive. So thank you for keeping Rob and I motivated. Thank you for your kind words. Sometimes it does just feel like we're talking into a microphone and no one's there. So to see your feedback really does make a huge difference and gives us a lift when we need it. So thank you so much.
So it's been a jam-packed episode. Great to catch up with our Hubbers journeys. But we've just got time before we finish to squeeze in Hub Extra, where we give you a resource, a tool, a quote, something to enrich your life in some small way. And we back it up with the Hub Extra email, which will hit your inbox if you're a Property Hub member every Friday morning. This week, we've got a quote, which I think is really relevant to what we've heard today. And the quote is, "You can have anything you want, but not everything you want." So this is a quote about focus. If you put your mind to one thing, whatever it is, chances are you can achieve it. But if you have this massive long wish list of everything that you want to accomplish, it's just not going to be possible. If you chase after everything, you're probably going to end up falling short and maybe feeling disappointed because you feel like you haven't accomplished everything that you want to. But if you focus, whatever it is, you can do it. And that's where it's so important to make sure that what you're focusing on is the right thing. It's really easy to come up with a giant list of nice to haves and, oh yeah, it'd be great to go here and do this and try that and invest in these 5 things over here. But the hard part is narrowing it down. It's easy to come up with options. The hard part is to reject options and say, yeah, all those things would be fantastic, but what really matters is this. But once you identify that one thing, you can put a plan together to achieve it. And then, just like the people we've heard from today, you can put a plan in place and then you can go and do it.
So that's us for another week. Hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. We certainly have. What else would you enjoy though? We want to know. Tell us. Get yourself on the socials. You must have access to at least one. Whether it's Facebook, Twitter or Instagram, we're there. You can find us at Property Hub UK or get along to the forum at propertyhub.net because there's a post on this very podcast there where you can let us know what you thought of this week's episode, everyone's progress, and you can also let us know what else you'd like us to cover in future weeks. Before we head off, just a final note that if you'd like to know what Rob and I do outside of the podcast and all the businesses that we work on, then head along to propertyhub.net/discover. We don't want to bang on about it on the podcast. So if you'd like to hear us bang on about our businesses and what we do and how we can help, get along to that URL instead. But that's us for another week. We'll be back with Ask Rob and Rob on Tuesday and, of course, the Property Podcast on Thursday. But until then, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.